two hands-on write-ups, same game, same sections, completely opposite conclusions. GameSpot spent 2 hours with The Sinking City 2 and came away calling it a checklist of survival horror requirements. Predictable, unchallenging, and the word they used was uninspired. Rely on Horror covered the same sections and came away thinking this could finally be the breakout survival horror game that puts the series on the map. And Rock Paper Shotgun ran a headline saying we might finally have a Cthulhu survival horror game to rival Resident Evil and Silent Hill. That's a big gap. So I went through both of the detailed write-ups line by line. And here's the thing that makes this interesting. They describe exactly the same features. They just disagree completely about whether that's a good thing. Let's get into it. The Sinking City 2 is from Frogwares, the Sherlock Holmes studio, and it's a sequel that deliberately isn't trying to be what the first game was. The original was open world, big flooded city, loads of side quests, detective work as the backbone, and a fairly rough attempt at third-person action bolted onto it. It wasn't very good, but it was ambitious and people respected the swing. The sequel goes the other direction. Instead of an open world investigation game, it's survival horror. Confined spaces, limited inventory, scarce ammo, safe rooms. You play Calvin Rafferty, an occult adventurer. Fedora, brown leather jacket, and what GameSpot described as Harrison Ford's snark minus the charm, which is a hell of a way to describe a protagonist. He and his partner, Faye Bennett, perform a ritual to enter somewhere called the Dreamlands. It goes wrong. Calvin comes back with no memory of the trip, Faye doesn't come back at all, she's in a coma, so Calvin goes into the flooded 1920s version of Arkham looking for anyone who can bring her back. You move between sections of the drowned city by boat, dock at piers and explore on foot. Library, graveyard, church, hospital. Note, before we go further, I haven't played this myself. What I've got is the hands-on coverage from people who did, and this time that's more useful than usual because I've got two of them who disagree. Comparing them tells you more than either one alone. Where I'm reading between the lines, I'll say so. Let's take the positive case first, because it's more specific than you'd expect. Rely on Horror's writer said the moment it clicked was a section set inside Akeley Hospital. Denser and more claustrophobic than everything before it. Locked doors that loop back into hallways you've already walked, every room built to reward searching properly. And there's a detail from that section that I think tells you what this game is going for. To get past a security system, you have to obtain the preserved face of a nurse. Their words. And they specifically praised it for being grotesque without being theatrical about it. That's a good instinct. Horror games love to shout. This one apparently just puts the thing in front of you and moves on. The structural argument was this. Frogwares has a history of ambition colliding with technical roughness, and scaling down to survival horror makes the game focused in a way the first one never was. The detective work is still there. You collect evidence, organise it on a board, link pieces together. But it's a supporting system now instead of the whole game. They also flagged something I think is genuinely smart. There's a resource called Dream Essence that unlocks passive abilities, but you can only equip a limited number at once, which means you can't stack yourself into invincibility. And their point was that survival horror only works if the player stays vulnerable. That's a real design decision, and a lot of modern horror games get it wrong. Now GameSpot, and this is where it gets harsh, their writer describes navigating the same confined spaces, library, graveyard, hospital, limited inventory, collecting keys and puzzle pieces, scarce ammo, enemies appearing where there's nowhere to run, kiting shambling zombies around furniture and waiting for the reticle to settle on their glowing weak points. Safe rooms with calming music and a storage chest, a map that tells you when you've cleared a room, extra inventory slots and weapon upgrades hidden in special chests. And then he says, if that reads like a survival horror checklist, that's because it is. That's the core of the complaint. Not that anything's broken, that nothing's new. Everything in that list is something Resident Evil 7, Alan Wake 2 or the Silent Hill 2 remake already did, and doing it again competently isn't the same as doing something. The bigger problem he hit was difficulty. He played on hard and the tension never arrived. Enemies have obvious weak spots and predictable movement. He described surviving a fight not as scraping through by the skin of his teeth, but as wandering around avoiding danger and waiting for the right moment to shoot. He also called the movement stiff and the gunplay unsatisfying, which is the criticism that's followed Frogwares through every game they've made. And there's one more, and I think it's the sharpest. The investigation board, the evidence linking, the deduction, he called functional and intuitive and said he wants more of it. But it's optional. It's a supporting feature, which means the studio's single best skill, the thing they've been sharpening across a decade of Sherlock Holmes games, is now a side system in their own game. He called that a misstep, and I think he's right. Here's what I found most useful though. Put the two write-ups side by side, and the disagreement isn't about facts. Both describe safe rooms, both describe a map that tracks cleared rooms, both describe limited inventory, scarce ammo, enemies with visible weak spots, and detective work reduced to a support role. They agree on every single mechanic. What they disagree on is whether that's enough. Rely on Horror looked at a studio known for overreaching and saw a game that finally knows what it is. GameSpot looked at the same thing and saw a studio playing it safe in a genre that's already crowded with better versions of this. And honestly, both readings are defensible, and which one applies to you depends on one question. How much survival horror have you already played? If Resident Evil Village and Silent Hill 2 are recent memories, you'll probably feel what GameSpot felt. If you like the genre but you're not saturated in it, focused and competent might be exactly what you want. That's not me dodging, that's genuinely what the split is. One more thing that I think deserves saying because GameSpot raised it and it changes how you read the whole game. Frogwares is Ukrainian. The studio is based in Kiev. The war is addressed directly with a message at the start of the game. So when we talk about a sequel scaling back its ambitions, there's a reason sitting underneath that which has nothing to do with design philosophy. Pulling back from an open world to a tighter, focused survival horror game is what a studio does when it needs to ship something achievable under conditions nobody should have to work in. That doesn't make the game better than it is, but it's context I'd want if I were deciding whether safe is a criticism here. So, should you buy it? If you want a Lovecraftian survival horror game and you're not burned out on the genre, yes. Both write-ups suggest the atmosphere delivers, and nobody said a bad word about the world itself. The drowned Arkham, the boat navigation between piers, the hospital, that part isn't in dispute. If you loved the first game for the detective work, be careful. That's a supporting system now, and the person who liked this game most and the person who liked it least both said the same thing about it. And if you've played a lot of survival horror, the difficulty is the thing to watch. That's the one complaint that would kill it for me, and it's the one where opinions split hardest. Here's where I land. Everything I've read describes a competent, atmospheric survival horror game from a studio that's finally not biting off more than it can chew. Whether competent is enough is the whole argument, and that's a question about you, not about the game. Links below. If you've played the original, was it the detective work that got you, or the atmosphere? Because that answer probably tells you whether this sequel is for you.